Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I have got a topic that I am very aware can be very divisive. I am very much aware that people can have very strongly held beliefs about today's topic. I would hope that we can all be respectful in the comments if we are for or against. But I want to talk about Florida Republican Representative Kat Kamak, who, in my opinion, is a massive hypocrite. You may agree, you may disagree. Let me know in the comments. But let's get into that. That's the topic of today's video. First of all, though, I want to thank any returning subscribers. If you have only just discovered the channel, thank you, welcome. If you are so kind to give us a like, to join in conversation in the comment section, it does help the algorithm push out my content to other similar like-minded viewers. If you enjoy what you've watched, please consider subscribing. So we're going to jump into the video without any delay. It might already be apparent from my tone that I don't like her, or it might have been apparent when I called her a massive hypocrite. Either way, she's the topic of today's video. Now, you might be thinking, why are we talking about Kat Kamak? I'm not sure if I said that correctly, but honestly, I don't like her, so I don't really care. I'm going to take us to TikTok, and that's going to give us an overview.
A Republican congresswoman had life-saving treatment delayed because of an anti-abortion law which she supported. Despite Florida Representative Kat Kamak needing treatment for an ectopic pregnancy last year, medical staff at the Gainesville emergency room were reluctant to help her. Florida's controversial 6-week abortion ban had just taken effect, and since Kamak was around 5 weeks into the pregnancy, staff were afraid of losing their licenses or going to jail if they were seen to have broken the new law. They eventually did help her several hours later after Kamak, the co-chair of the House Pro-Life Caucus, helped clarify that this treatment was allowed under the legislation. Pro-choice groups have said this proves the law is too vague and punishing for medical professionals, while Kamak said the staff were victims of left-wing fear-mongering.
Okay, so that's a very quick sum up. You might still all be thinking, why is this even a topic? Okay, I'm going to give you another overview.
Republican Representative Kat Kamak needed an abortion, so she had one. She got one. You want to know how she got one? She called the governor's office. Because the medical professionals in Florida know that the 6-week total abortion ban is in place, and they didn't know what to do. So she called the governor's office, and the governor's office told those healthcare providers, it's totally okay, give her an abortion. You're not going to lose your license. You're not going to lose anything. You're not going to lose your jobs. Give her the abortion that she needs to save her life. So if you're super privileged, then you can get an abortion that's going to be life-saving. You can have access to health care that's necessary for women. This happens all the time, by the way. Miscarriages, hemorrhaging, ectopic pregnancies, all reasons to need an abortion for a healthcare reason to save somebody's life. But unless you're privileged and you can call the governor's office, there might be a murky gray area that might be causing confusion where your provider can't just make that determination based off their expertise and knowledge and their medical license. A Republican needed an abortion, so she got one, while actively voting against other women's rights to their health care.
Okay, guys, so we've had two summaries of the events surrounding Kat Kamak. You might be thinking, surely she might be Republican, but she wasn't out here celebrating the rollback of Roe v. Wade. Maybe she wasn't, saying and beating her chest in celebration of the reduction in women's right to choose. Well, let us see.
And yes, this is an incredible moment for the pro-life world and for all the advocates who have worked so hard for this moment. And of course, this, as you said, is personal to me. When my mom was 27 years old, she had a stroke several days before giving birth to my sister. And it was then that the doctors told her, after a year of learning how to walk again, regaining motor functions, that she would never be able to have children again safely, because it would probably cost her her own life and the life of her child. So when she found herself pregnant with me many years later, she was alone, she was scared, and doctors left, right, and center were telling her to abort me. Even my own grandparents, for fear of her life, asked her, "Do you want to die?" So you can imagine how scary that moment must have been for a single mom. But she made the courageous decision. She rejected abortion and was able to deliver a healthy baby girl. And I'm here today, the youngest Republican woman in the country, in Congress, because of my mom's brave decision and her advocacy for life.
That is amazing. And that's why these pro life centers are so important, because it would give somebody like your mom an option and it would provide them support. So it's so sad to see them being vandalized across the country. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis said that he wants to do more to protect the pro life movement. What would you like to see done in terms of Florida law?
You know, I think that what Florida has done was an amazing step in terms of advocacy for the sanctity of life. And, you know, you just hit on that, Carly. We saw back in the day not a lot of resources for life, not a lot of efforts for adoption or fostering. And so back when my mom had to make this decision, she didn't have those resources, but she still stood firm for life. Now we have pregnancy centers all across the country. And I like to tell women that you have options. There are real choices here,
Yes.
not just the abortion. That's not a real choice. That's murder. So let's get to some place where we can have an honest conversation. And what this decision does is not outlaw abortion. It returns the issue to the states where it should have been all along. So while this was a win for the sanctity of life, it's also a win for the sanctity of our Constitution, because this was a 10th Amendment issue all along. And as Americans, we adhere to the basic tenets of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if we're going to uphold those American values, it starts with life. So states have some work to do. Florida's taken some great first steps. And I'd love to see more resources for adoption, talking about maternity leave across the country. I'd love for us to start that conversation in a healthy, productive way as we move away from this barbaric practice that we have seen of the second and third trimester abortion. So it's a great day
Absolutely.
for life, a great day for America.
It certainly is. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us.
I honestly am flabbergasted. Now, I wanted to play the entire clip because I'm very acutely aware that some people might have a viewpoint where they think she wasn't vehemently against Roe v. Wade, she wasn't a supporter, so therefore let her get her abortion in peace. Well, I thought it was important to share that clip so we can see that, as she said from her own mouth, abortion is, and she is pro life. She is part of the party that brought this bill in. And so she's a massive hypocrite, because if you are pro life, you should remain steadfast in your pro life views, and you should assume the risks and the responsibilities that come with the fact that you had an ectopic pregnancy. Now, my background is medical. I trained as a doctor. I live in the United Kingdom, which I'm very thankful for given recent events in the United States, which at some point I considered relocating to, but thank God. I say all that to say, let's put aside ectopic for a moment. It's a pregnancy. So she is an advocate who says all pregnancy, pro life, and therefore, if abortion, a medical treatment, as she stated in this clip we've just watched, why did she feel entitled to then get an abortion when things were not in her favor? Because you see, I think a lot of people forget that abortion procedures is a medical process, is a medical procedure. And as such, it is healthcare. If you had a tumor growing on you, people could go in and remove it. So certain pregnancies are just not viable. Certain pregnancies, even if the fetus could be brought to life and you could give birth to that fetus slash baby, the psychological impact of doing so makes the pregnancy non-viable. That could be because it's a pregnancy as a result of other form of traumatic episode. I'm just trying to highlight the fact that if it's a traumatic conception, if it's something that is not viable for both physical and psychological impact it can cause, there is a medical treatment. And the word abortion has been used as this smarmy scare tactic of a phrase, but it is medical treatment, which this Republican representative who created a bill against it, stated she's pro-life, was willing to take up as treatment when her pregnancy was deemed non-viable. So I hope everyone can see the hypocrisy in her actions. That's what I'm trying to highlight by playing this full clip. Let's go to some of the comments. She had a choice. Very, very true. This comment highlights the fact that she is not pro life, she is pro choice. Her actions show that she's pro choice. This is what pro choice is all about. Okay? It's giving women the choice. Do you want to take along the risk that this current pregnancy you have? The next pregnancy could be different. Your first pregnancy could have been different, but in this current pregnancy, in this Republican's case, it's an ectopic that comes with risks, which runs the gamut all the way to being potentially fatal. So she then became suddenly pro choice in that moment and opted to enact the process of healthcare, which is the same thing as abortion. If you notice, if you go to the article, she chooses to say she did not have an abortion, she had a medical procedure, a medical this, that. It's an abortion. An abortion is a medical treatment. A medical treatment that ends a pregnancy is abortion. They mean the same thing. You can't hate on the word abortion, call abortion, have a medical treatment that is an abortion, and then say you didn't have an abortion. This other comment agrees with me where it says Kat Kamak is a huge hypocrite. When she needed an abortion for an ectopic pregnancy, suddenly she viewed it as healthcare. Absolutely shame on her, okay? Absolute shame on her. This I wanted to highlight. Republicans wrote the law. How is she blaming the Dems? So that's crazy. In the earlier clips, you saw her basically suggest it was scaremongering. I'm going to explain what that comment is talking about. The Republicans wrote the laws. How is it the Dems' fault? Let me take us back and we will be able to do that.
This is Republican State Rep Kat Kamek, and last year she was pregnant, and then she got some devastating news. She found out that she had an ectopic pregnancy, and not only was she at risk to lose the ability to have children in the future, she was also at risk of dying. Good news is there are steps that could be taken. There's drugs she could take that would end that already not viable pregnancy and spare her life. And so, of course, she expected that to happen. The only problem is she's in Florida, and the 6-week abortion ban had just taken effect. And doctors were like, I don't know if we can do that. I'm not sure with this new law in place. If we can do that, I don't want to lose my license or go to jail. And she sprang into action. No, that can't happen to you. I was a supporter of this bill. I know what's in it. See, I'm good to go. You could do it to me. They're like, I don't know. I got to look into it. And then she even went as far as to call the governor's office late at night, but no one picked up because it was the middle of the night. Fortunately, within a few hours, doctors made the decision to go ahead and administer and take the risk, and her life and her fertility were spared. But that had to be a scary experience. This is something that we've been concerned about women all across the country with bans like this having to deal with. So obviously, when this happened to her, and she did this interview in the Wall Street Journal, obviously, she talked about her personal experience and how these laws can create issues and put women's lives at risk, right? Wrong. That's not what she did. What she did instead was not fault the Florida law for her experience. Instead, she accuses the left of scaring medical professionals with messaging. And that's why this happened. Because of the left. The left caused that. The left didn't scare those doctors. Your poorly written bill did. Okay? Attorneys got on the internet and started talking and saying, hey, I looked at this bill, and if I'm representing a doctor and this doctor contacts me and says, how much exposure do I have with this? I say the problem is that it says some things are okay and some things aren't, but it's not real clear on the language. It doesn't define it well. So if we're just talking about limiting your risk as much as possible, I'd say don't do any of the procedures. That's the advice that attorneys were being forced to give their clientele who are medical professionals. Like, if they feel like railroading you and going after you, feels like they kind of could with this. But even with that set aside, can we talk about one more element of this that Kat is failing to acknowledge? Her level of privilege in that situation. Okay, she was able to confidently tell these doctors, you're not going to get in trouble. I'm a state representative. Like, I got your back. I was a part of this. I understand. She was able to pull it up and look at it and start talking about it line by line. I don't know if the average woman going through that would think to do that or would even be listened to when they tried to do that. And then she called the governor's office. I mean, that's a nice move to have. If she had waited till morning, someone would have been there to answer. The average woman experiencing this can't just call the governor's office. She got to live. She got to move on, get pregnant again, and have a child. A luxury that isn't afforded all of the women who have a similar experience to hers. And instead of acknowledging that and saying, let me work to make that better, let me at least work to change the language to make it clearer so doctors don't have to worry. She just blames the left. There are women who have literally died because of laws like this in states around the country. And all she can do, instead of standing up for women and being like, this was a terrible experience, I have to make sure no one experiences this, she's just going to toe the company line like a good little soldier.
So, guys, that gives a lot more context, and hopefully, a lot more people can see the hypocrisy in Kat actions as a Republican who helped bring into passing this terrible, terrible bill. And I'll say that with full chest because it's very wishy washy, as the guy gave you an overview, this creator to the end. It's also the fact that she claims to be pro life. But if you're pro life to the extent that she's saying a medical procedure slash the terminology abortion, which is a treatment, there's a lot of medical steps that people can engage in as part of medical treatment in terminating a non viable pregnancy, in terminating a risky pregnancy. And risk can mean physical and psychological. I cannot stress that enough. I highlight this because she had an injection, methotrexate. It's a medication, it's a drug. You can give methotrexate for other conditions, but in this situation, the way it was administered medically terminates a pregnancy. Yes, it was an ectopic. I am in support of women. If you have a non viable, risky pregnancy, in this representative's case, it is an ectopic pregnancy, you should live in a place where the laws allow you to seek medical care, where your clinicians are not hesitating because the laws essentially mean they might go to jail. And this is a woman who advocated strongly for this law. And then when she found herself in a risky pregnancy, she suddenly became pro-choice, because that's what I don't think a lot of pro-lifers understand is you pick a side, and if you say you're pro-life, then ride with that to the very end. But I'm just highlighting the fact that historically, before the advancement in medicine, people who had ectopic pregnancies would have passed on. Historically, if you were pro life and you stood on that stance, you would not now switch into being pro choice and electing to have a medical procedure to terminate that risky pregnancy, because that's all an ectopic pregnancy is. If you left the pregnancy alone, it would continue to grow. It has blood supply. What would eventually, unfortunately, happen though is you would have a rupture because it's not in the womb, it's not in the right site. But that is a pregnancy. That is a fetus that would go on to form into the relevant cells that would go on to be quote unquote a baby. Okay, so I'm just trying to stress the fact that she claims to be pro life, but she actually is pro choice, because when her life mattered, she made a choice to have a medical procedure. That medical procedure is an abortion, whether she denies to use the word or denies that's what she had done. And that allowed her to save her life, save her fertility, and she was able to recover from that medical treatment, go on to now have another child, go on to have family planning and give birth to a child. Had she unfortunately not survived that ectopic pregnancy, which a lot of pro-lifers who refuse medical treatment when they have risky, unhealthy pregnancies, they often do not go on to have the option to continue to have pregnancies, or sometimes to continue to be living. Call a spade a spade. So this woman is a massive hypocrite. I believe with this clip we've watched, you have a bit more of an understanding. I really like this comment and I wanted to highlight it. Dr. V in this comment says, rules for thee, but not for me. That is the mantra. And it's so very, very true. She essentially said the law applies unless it's someone in government, i.e. herself. That's why she called the governor, okay? And this comment says the only reason she got that abortion is because of her connections and extreme privilege, a position she knew she was privileged in. And this content creator highlighted the fact that many women have unfortunately passed on, and they have not been able to have the same level of privilege of saying, I am someone in government body, I helped write this bill, you're not understanding the bill, hey, you medical professionals, give me treatment. Many women are not able to do that. And I'm going to highlight that with this case here.
This is deceased mother of two, Adriana Smith, who went into her local emergency room because she had a headache that she could not get rid of, and was sent back home only the following day to be diagnosed with a brain aneurysm, which led to a brain bleed and her death. She is survived by two children. her son that she previously had, and the baby that she was made to carry while kept alive on life support due to Georgia's one heartbeat rule. At the time of her death, she was less than the amount of months that previously you were allowed to get a legal abortion. This is Kat Kamak, 37-year-old Republican Congresswoman from Florida. She was diagnosed as having an ectopic pregnancy. People at the facility were afraid to provide her with the medication that would invoke an actual abortion due to Florida's non-abortion laws. She has not given birth. She is no longer pregnant. Because what did she do? She went up the food chain to the governor for the governor to okay her having an abortion. She's alive and well. Healthcare providers in Georgia allowed Miss Adrian Smith to be kept alive on life support after being brain dead and forced her unborn child to suffer until they felt as if they were at a point where the child could survive without any of the natural things that occurred in a woman's body with the child being attached to them. They ran a medical experiment on Miss Adriana Smith in order to make a point with under the guise of that they're following the law. She's gone. Kat Kamak is still alive. Even though her pregnancy was only life-threatening to her. Only life-threatening to her. In the case of Miss Adriana Smith, both of them would have died had she not been kept on life support. Miss Kamak here wasn't made to experience any of that in order to preserve the child because her life was more important. The fucking hypocrisy. But I just wanted to make sure that y'all could see this, that people recognize this, that people heard about this. This is what so-called anti-abortion laws really are. It's another way to have some sense of control. Nothing more, nothing less. And control over the bodies of others. And when there's privilege involved, the rules are never going to be enforced the same.
Okay, guys, so I really wanted to highlight the disparity in these two cases, the injustice in these two cases. Now, I'm going to take us to an article very quickly. That's her face. I don't like her. We already know this. She's a hypocrite. That's why I don't like her. But this is it. So I'm going to take us through this really quickly. Adriana Smith's condition began in February when she visited a hospital with what she believed was a severe headache. The case of a brain-dead woman from Georgia, US, whose premature baby recently was delivered through C-section. So her baby was delivered through C-section finally, and it had long hit global headlines, but the delivery has again hit global headlines, not just for the rarity of her case, but due to a debate over abortion rights and medical ethics in the country. Adriana Smith's mother, April Newkirk, told local news outlet that her daughter's baby, named Chance, was delivered on June 13. However, she added that while she is happy that the child was born, the decision to allow Adriana Smith, to be kept on life support should have been left to the family. She's talking about choice there. Newkirk, the mother of this deceased woman, Adriana Smith, says, "We didn't have a choice or a say about it." Adriana Smith was removed from life support on June 17th. Chance, the child in her womb, alarmingly weighs under a kilo, and Chance remains in the neonatal intensive care unit, according to multiple reports. I would also like to highlight that the state of Georgia has made this family of this brain-dead woman foot the bill the entire time she was on life support, which was from just under 6 weeks until they delivered this baby a few weeks to days ago. They will now also be footing the neonatal care bill. This is why I'm saying choice is important. You could want that choice. This family could very well have said, look, we want to keep our brain dead daughter on life support, give this baby every chance to fight and be born by C-section. But that is why choice is important. This was a family that was forced by this anti-abortion law in Georgia. What had happened? So Adriana was a nurse herself. Her condition began in February when she visited. So bear in mind, baby was born in June. When she visited a hospital with what she believed was a severe headache. After being discharged with medication, she had no scans. The 31-year-old expecting mother had to be rushed to a different hospital the very next day, gasping for air. The doctors at that hospital, Emory University Hospital, discovered blood clots in her brain, and within hours she was declared dead. As I mentioned, a medical background, I'm a doctor. This is meant to be a stroke call. This is meant to be a red phone alert. With the history she's giving, I'm currently pregnant. I'm having a severe sudden onset headache. If you go into the case a bit more, her symptoms were textbook for getting her a scan that first time you saw her. So she was seen by the doctors. They discovered the blood clot in her brain. Within hours, she was brain dead because there's no blood supply. If a blood clot happens in your brain, you don't get oxygen past the point where you have the blockage, which is the clot. You get brain tissue death. That's why she's declared brain dead. She was no longer alive. The issue then gained national attention and sparked outrage, rightly so, when Smith's family revealed that doctors informed them that based on Georgia's 6 weeks abortion ban, which includes fetal personhood language, it's required that Adriana Smith, be kept alive and support the pregnancy. So she was kept alive to support the pregnancy. Before Chance's birth, Newkirk, the mother of Adriana, said, "We want the baby. That's a part of my daughter, but the decision should have been left to us, not the state." And this is what I am trying to highlight with this video. I don't personally feel that people who are pro-life understand the importance of pro-choice, understand the importance of giving people autonomy, giving women, giving their families in this situation with Adriana, the ability to make a choice, okay? But if you say you're pro-life, as Kat Kamak said she was, then stand on that hill and be pro-life to the end. Do not now switch, take a medical procedure, which is the abortion, having the injection, to get rid of your risky non-viable pregnancy, okay? She should have gone ahead with that pregnancy based on her stance. I, as a doctor, would not advocate that, but she, as a pro-lifer who called abortion, that is her stance, okay? So, as mentioned, the life support was taken off June 17th. The baby is now in intensive care unit. So Adriana's family are now planning her funeral. And in terms of Newkirk, who is the mother of Adriana, she said physicians have told her they were legally obligated to keep Adriana Smith on life support. And that's what that guy was talking about in his clip about when these doctors who are unsure because the anti-abortion bans are so wishy-washy and non-specific, it meant that, as he highlighted, lawyers are saying, look, to minimize your risk, this is what you do. In a statement, the hospital said it relies on consensus from clinical experts, medical literature, and legal guidance to support our providers as they make individualized treatment recommendations in compliance with Georgia's abortion law and all other applicable laws. Our top priority continues to be the safety and well-being of the patients we serve. And I'd say to that, BS, okay? That is laughable. Everything they said before compliance with Georgia's abortion laws, you can disregard that, because had they been following clinical expertise, medical literature, and actual medical legal guidance, we would not even be having this discussion, okay? I know countries vary, states vary, but what I'm trying to highlight here is the fact that state to state, one woman, a Republican, was able to get an abortion. Another woman was kept on life support as some sort of experiment. I hope people can see the hypocrisy and how ludicrous this is. Everything they said before, basically compliance with Georgia's abortion law, is nonsense. It's essentially the abortion law was why they made the decision they made, okay? So I know I'm sounding a little bit heated, but as I said, this is a very close to my heart topic. Now, if you disagree, if you're interpreting that statement differently, if you feel that the clips I've shown you so far give a different viewpoint, let me know in the comment. I will definitely respond to them. I will be very intrigued to see what angle you're coming at this, okay? I want you to focus on the case we're talking about specifically, and I want you to focus on the fact that how these laws have been enacted has meant that medical professionals are not able to do their job. And abortion is a medical procedure that is allowed in very specific situations, okay? Pro-lifers like to act as though those of us that are pro-choice are just out here throwing abortion procedures like it's candy on Halloween, okay? It's very much a process that is regulated. And I'm all for regulation. I work in the United Kingdom. It's regulated here. We follow the laws to the T, okay? And I'm going to come back to that in a second. So let's finish the article. Critics argue that such laws risk elevating fetal rights above those of the person carrying the pregnancy, essentially saying the unborn fetus, unborn child, whatever phrase is not going to get you in a tizzy. They're basically saying that the unborn fetus, I'm medical, I'm going to stick with fetus, is more important than the living person carrying the pregnancy. In 2019, Georgia's Republican governor, Brian Kemp, approved a law imposing a near total ban on abortions. Absolutely mind blown that that's even a thing in this 2025 era world, okay? However, the legislation only came into force after the US Supreme Court overturned the Roe v. Wade, which everyone knows about, in 2022, which had previously ensured a constitutional right to abortion for women. And again, absolutely ridiculous. Georgia continues to lag behind in healthcare, which I'm only highlighting because this poor woman's pregnancy ended up in the way it did because they missed a condition that should have been a red alert, that should have been a stroke call. She should have got her scan. We can intervene and treat clots. We have medication. Essentially, lay people will say it's clot busting, but it's medication we give and it breaks down clots. This woman had a viable fighting chance, but they missed it. They missed the window of opportunity. And again, the article highlights that Georgia lags behind in healthcare. And consistently, they rank amongst the lowest in the nation. So, what I wanted to highlight, very quickly, is where she says, she decided against surgery. So, you see what I mean about how she claimed to be pro life? Suddenly, she's flipping into pro choice. That means she's weighing up her options. She could have surgery. Typically, that's a DNC, dilatation and curettage. Or she could have an injection. She could have pill insertion. Being American, maybe they have some other options as well. But that's the standard 3 we typically do over here, okay? There's other forms of surgery as well. But she decided against surgery. What does decision mean? What does deciding mean? That means she made a choice, okay? However, the article goes on to say the doctors, the medics, they had to be persuaded to give her a shot. That means she said no to surgery, but said yes to an injection of methotrexate, which would expel the pregnancy, okay? Now, I'm just highlighting all that to show that this is what pro-choice looks like. She may claim in her words and her actions that she's pro-life, but when really push came to shove, she was pro-choice. That is the hypocrisy of the whole situation, okay? To wrap up this video, as I mentioned, I'm a doctor by background. I work in the United Kingdom, which I'm ever more so thankful for. We have our own other issues. I'm not even going to hold you. But one thing is not this. So let me take us through a recent positive, in my opinion, event that happened in the UK. Now, there's going to be some, I'm trying to find the right words, ignorant people out there who are going to say, oh, UK, so MP stands for Members of Parliament. That's our body in government that enacts laws and bills and things like that. They're going to say the MPs have voted to support abortion indiscriminately. They have not. Let's go through what I mean. MPs back decriminalization of abortion. So what this is talking about is that the MPs, members of parliament in the United Kingdom, have backed a change to the law that could see abortion decriminalized in England and Wales. Now, so this recent bill that was supported is affecting England and Wales because Ireland had already made their own decision. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So there was a vote in our parliament on the 17th of June when that poor woman was having her C-section, that poor deceased brain dead woman, that saw lawmakers endorse the new Clause 1 amendment to the Crime and Policing Bill, which could see an end to the threat of criminal investigation and prosecution of women who choose to terminate their pregnancy. The MPs voted 379 to 137, overwhelmingly in favor of the amendment. Thank goodness. And it will become law if the provision remains unamended by the Lords during the forthcoming scrutiny. So it's gone through the House of MPs, it's going to go through the House of Lords. It's just how the UK works. So fingers crossed, guys. While the amendment will bring about the decriminalization of abortion in England and Wales for women, many other aspects of the provision of terminations will remain unchanged. I'm going to explain. So this is me just trying to highlight the fact that yes, MPs supported this amendment to our bill. It does not change the fact that typically in the UK, you need 2 clinicians to sign off on a pregnancy being non-viable, being risky, and risk is physical and psychological. It goes into a lot of details, but you need 2 vetted, medically registered with our General Medical Council, which is the body that oversees all medics in the United Kingdom, which it covers England and Wales. You need not just one clinician, but two. Two doctors have to agree that your pregnancy is risky to not just the fetus, yes, as in the baby's chance of life and everything is just non-viable, but also to the mother. And risk can be psychological, could be physical, as in an ectopic pregnancy, which is physical, psychological, if the pregnancy came about in a traumatic manner, for example. So that has always been the case in the United Kingdom. But there had always been this sort of loophole that allowed women to be brought up on criminal charges. And that's what the amendment is targeting. It does not change the fact that we still need two clinicians to sign off following the law on whether or not you can have an abortion in the United Kingdom. Okay. So essentially, if we skip on down here, the MP, the Labour MP that brought this bill, said although abortion is available in England and Wales under conditions set by 1967 Abortion Act, the law underpinning it dates back to 1861. So essentially, there was a law earlier that was criminalizing women getting abortions in the UK because it was just a barbaric time in 1861 to be alive. But then we had an amendment in 1967, or we had the Abortion Act brought out in 1967 that then set forth guidance on how abortions can be conducted legally with medical supervision. Okay. This law in 1861 was originally passed by an all-male parliament elected by men alone. This Victorian law is increasingly used until MPs obviously amended it June 17th. But this law had been increasingly used against vulnerable women and girls since 2020. More than 100 women have been criminally investigated. Now, they may not be found guilty, but going through a criminal investigation because you made the choice to have an abortion for the fact that the pregnancy was risky, it was deemed risky, it was signed off by two clinicians, is crazy. Women affected are often acutely vulnerable, victims of domestic abuse, violence, human trafficking, exploitation, girls under the age of 18, and women who have suffered miscarriages, stillbirth, who have been given birth prematurely, and they face invasive and prolonged criminal investigation by the UK police. Whole topic for another day, but that's what this is basically saying. So she's talking about the fact that the new clause 1 she brought about is about recognizing that these women need care and support, not criminalization. Okay. So, welcoming the vote, the BMA. So, this article is from the BMA, which is the British Medical Association. So, the BMA's Medical Ethics Committee has a deputy chair, Ed Frew, and he described it as an important and vital step towards ending the persecution of women seeking terminations in England and Wales and ensuring abortion be viewed as a medical procedure, not a crime. So he went on to say the passing of this amendment is a significant and long overdue step towards reforming antiquated abortion law in England and Wales. Okay, so there's many reasons and many problems being here in the UK, but this is a moment that I was glad to be someone who is a UK citizen. Okay. Women seeking an abortion can be in an incredibly vulnerable situation. They need access to timely and good quality healthcare and support, not to face questions from police and be threatened with prosecution and up to a lifetime in prison. And I'm bringing this up to highlight the fact that this is what the doctors in the States are worried about, losing their license, going through a criminal procedure. So the BMA, the British Medical Association, has long been of the view that abortion is a healthcare matter, not one for the police and the criminal courts. This amendment, which they voted on and it passed June 17th, goes somewhere in recognizing this. Okay. So beyond this bill, they will continue to push for wider reform of abortion law. Okay. While abortion in the UK was legalized in specific circumstances under the Abortion Act of 1967, this law did not decriminalize abortion generally, but placed strict requirements around the termination of pregnancy. So this goes on to explain. These include women seeking a termination who meet the prescribed criteria and that abortions must take place within a hospital. They must be approved and signed off by two doctors. At present, any woman terminating a pregnancy without meeting the legal requirements stipulated by 1967 Act faces potential prosecution and imprisonment up to a life sentence. Life sentence, that's crazy. The UK-wide decriminalisation of abortion has been BMA policy since 2017, with MPs voting to end the criminalisation of abortion in Northern Ireland in 2019. So United Kingdom is made up of England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. I remember when this was passing, it was so monumental, and I'm so glad that, yes, we are late to the party, but we have finally done the same in England and Wales. Only a couple, 6 years later, but still. And they conclude by saying, Treating a common medical procedure as a crime, with exceptions, is stigmatizing for both women and healthcare professionals who are providing a legal and necessary service. Clinical care, professional practice, societal attitudes have changed significantly since the enactment of the current criminal sanctions on abortion, 1861. That's what they're referring to. Abortion is a safe procedure for which major complications and mortality are rare at all gestations. It is and should be treated as a medical, not a criminal issue. So I know I went off on a bit of a tangent there, guys, but coming back to the crux of the matter, let us stay on the face of this woman. She's a hypocrite. I do not think anyone can argue otherwise. She claims to be pro life, pushed anti abortion laws, but when push came to shove, when she herself had in her situation a physically risky pregnancy, but still a viable pregnancy nonetheless, that is a pregnancy that would have continued to grow, she opted, because her life was at risk, to become from pro life to pro choice, a massive hypocrite, and take medical treatment, which is an abortion, whether she chooses to acknowledge that or not. So, all the people who claim to be pro life, if you were in this same situation, what would you have done? Be honest in the comments, let me know. This is a space where I want to engage in discussion. I'm intrigued to know what you think. I am pro choice. But being pro choice means you can choose to keep a risky pregnancy or you can choose to terminate it via a medical procedure, as this Republican woman did, using medical treatment, whether that's surgery, injection, or pills, tablets. Pro choice gives women choice and autonomy. Pro choice does not mean we hand out abortions like candy. Pro choice means that we perform medical procedures under strict regulations, and this helps to ensure that women are safe, women survive risky pregnancies, women who want families and children can go on to have said families and children because they have not become infertile through a risky pregnancy, or in the worst case scenario, no longer with us. So I hope that everyone can understand that this woman is a hypocrite, a massive one. And I think that a lot of people who are claiming to be pro life, a lot of people who are very outwardly pro abortion bans, when put in similar situations, they make different choices. They actually make choices. They don't just run down the pro life pathway, they start to make choices. So, in my opinion, if you do that, if you're swayed, you are a hypocrite who feels when it suits you, you should be allowed to make a choice to have a medical procedure, which is an abortion, but you do not want other people to have that option. And that is a form of control. So, I'm going to leave this video here. It's a bit longer than I thought it was going to be. But guys, if you've enjoyed the content, subscribe. If you have differing thoughts, let me know in the comment section. We can have a discussion, we can have a debate. Essentially, people shouldn't be hypocrites. If you come out supporting one stance, one thing, then that should be your stance throughout. I do not like the fact that she changed her stance, does not want to say she had an abortion, essentially switched from pro life to pro choice. And that's why I don't like her. That's why I find her a massive hypocrite. And the comments we looked at earlier would agree. But let me know if you agree and what you guys think. So that's it for this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.